What I want to talk to you about in this video is my absolute favorite replay for all of TI-10. And you might be thinking, of course, it's going to be a Team Spirit replay or, LGD, something like that. No, actually, it's not a playoff match at all, and it's T1 versus Thunder Predator from the group stage. So you'd think that this match wouldn't matter that much, and it kind of didn't, but what happened in it was so damn fascinating to me. Basically what happened was that T1 got completely outdrafted, at least in the early game. Thunder Predator was completely snowballing. It looked like the game was totally over, and then T1 delayed the game to essentially allow themselves to win with 3 carries that couldn't fight. They played the best cat and mouse game of Dota that I've ever seen. And that's why this is my favorite replay from TI-10. And so that's what we're going to take a look at. Okay, so here we are at the 7-minute mark into the game. Thunder Predator has a 1k gold lead, but we can see that Bristleback is completely free farming and dominating the Lycan off lane. The mid lane is going hugely in favor of Timbersaw, so it's becoming very obvious to T1 that they are about to get snowballed on. And so what do? They don't have fighting cores, and so what they do is very cool. I'll show you exactly what they do. They smoke up. We can see here, they're the 2 supports smoked up. And you might think, okay, are they going for kills here? They can't. Between Undying and Shadow Shaman, these heroes literally don't do enough damage to kill anybody. So what the hell are they doing with this smoke? It's really weird. They do this full wraparound behind the tier 1 mid, which is just the craziest shit that I've ever seen. And then they tombstone and steal the enemy jungle. And so the beautiful thing about this is, well, obviously they're getting farm. They're stealing farm away from the enemy team that would be building their gold lead even more. They're taking farm themselves, so they're building their gold lead, which we can see the gold lead went from about 2k to 1k to 2k to 1k, and it's only going back in favor of T1 because of this farm that they're stealing. But the great thing about this is not that they're getting farm, it's that they're pressuring the enemies in a way that doesn't require them to kill anyone. They're pressuring the enemies by stealing their stacks, and they don't give a shit if they die here. Like, that's kind of the point. They would like to die, and so when they do this smoke, and they do this a lot during this entire game, they go with wards and sentries, and they sentry high grounds, they ward high grounds, and they protect themselves so that they're able to stay in these positions for as long as humanly possible. And then if we look at the other lanes, instead of these cores being together and looking to fight Thunder Predator and their death ball, they're just farming elsewhere. They're just taking as much farm as they can. They're staying as far away as possible. Lycan was sitting down here in the trees. Now that he sees people middle, he puts the wolves out, puts his body out, gets chased, he TPs away, he puts the wolves in the creep out to push the lane. And while this was happening, if we look at the the jungle where Whitemon and Zephyr have been chilling, they get gone on. They get scouted here. So he pops a tombstone on the high ground. Obviously, Nature's Prophet TP's in, and they just slowly and pathetically die as the 2 supports. But the cool thing here is that Thunder Predator wants to be pressuring these carries. There are 3 carries on T1's side. Pressuring any of these heroes would be good, but because of the ridiculous aggressive positioning from these 2 supports, they're just completely relieving pressure from their carries. They're all free farming in total opposite sides of the map. And we can see Lycan, he's microing wolves, almost sniping a courier. He's pulling creep waves, cutting creep waves, killing creep waves. And then what do the supports do now? So for a little while, T1, Zephyr and Whitemon, they're chilling, they're dewarding, they're delaying pushes a little bit. And then they smoked. I know that's what a lot of players do, is they just do something based on feel. It doesn't feel so good, they try something else. And so what do? They smoke up again, and they go to the polar opposite area of the map from where the death ball is, and they just pop serpent wards on the tower. They push. But, the main thing here is that the smoke is not to the death ball. The smoke is away from the death ball, so that way when they TP in like this, it's likely that there's going to be somebody that's split up, and so that the play is a lot better of a guarantee that they're going to win, even though they're in a deficit and they're playing with 3 carries versus a bunch of early game heroes, still, if it's a 5v4, you can at least get some trades. You can at least maybe pressure a little bit or get some kill. So we can see like this guy, for example. Let me go to the free camera. Frank is up here pushing, and so they're able to do this because Frank is up there. His TP's up now, so he can get into the fight, of course, but that was not the case, obviously, when he TP'd back. So it doesn't go so well for them. This is something, once again, going back to the feel thing, you can kind of have an idea of like, okay, on this timing, we'll try to fight, and if it works, it works. You can't run the literal calculations in Dota. That's not possible. So you just say like, okay, when we have this timing, maybe we're going to try to fight. Maybe they're trying to fight with like the Lycan Dom timing, or the Echo Saber on Tiny, something along those lines. Didn't end up working out that well. They're losing this gold lead. And so what do? They go back to their annoying enemy jungle taking farm pressuring. That's what I want to call it. It's like pressure farming. I think that's what BSJ says. They literally use serpent wards to farm an ancient stack, and they stack the ancients, and they do the exact same thing with Tombstone. And we can see on the high ground, we have another high ground ward that they're defending in the enemy jungle. And so the trade here, like the reason that they do this is because if the enemy team who wants to deathball, who wants to push, is coming and killing them while they're farming this, and they're dewarding this area while they're farming this, then what that means is this is the side of the map they don't want to play on, the enemies. They don't want to play on their own side. They're supposed to be deathballing. They're supposed to be taking towers. So this is delaying the game for T1's timing. If they get killed. If they don't get killed, then T1 is just farming. That's one thing people don't do in Dota, and at least in pubs. It's like fighting. At least in like Europe and SEA. Maybe in NA we, ignore fights a lot more. But in most regions, it's just like crazy fighting when sometimes you literally just can't fight the enemies. Like we can see in this game that this Morphling is just getting picked off. They're just dying. It's like impossible for them to fight right now. And so the way that T1 is getting the gold lead is through their supports. It's so cool because you normally wouldn't see this, but you can tell that they've decided that this is what they need to do. And we can see Whitemon pulls a creep wave. He tries to Tombstone and also farm 2 camps at once. I don't know why the hell the creep wave didn't pull to him there. I remember watching this and I was very frustrated at that point because I thought that was a really good play by him. And they do this a lot throughout the whole replay, by the way, cutting waves like this. But I love that they're using these big cooldowns in Tombstone and Serpent Wards to just farm up the enemy jungle because they know there is no real high ground threat. There's tower threat because the treants, but there's no good way for Thunder Predator at this point in the game to push high ground. So they're like, we're just not going to fight them, but we're also not going to let them out farm us. If our supports die like this, well, he almost died there, actually. The Nyx was like right on top of him. If the supports die like this, in a situation like that, who cares? You're losing a support and you're making space for your team to farm. So the next thing I want to show you is just a clip of T1 successfully dragging creeps and farming with these big cooldowns. They did this a lot. This was just like rinse and repeat until they hit their timing. And I think reasonably looking at this draft, the timing, at least during the time of TI-10, was like, you wanted Lycan with the Ag so that he could wolf bite the Tiny. And then you wanted Tiny to have like a silver edge, so that way he can two-shot people with the ridiculous crit and the invis. But Tiny could also go for a BKB in this game because he's versus Timbersaw. And if you're going to go for the BKB, well, that gives enough timing for the Lycan to get his Aghanim Scepter. Then at that point, Morphling's probably going to have an Ethereal Blade, maybe a BKB of his own. So essentially, they're playing for like a 2-item timing in this game, which at the rate that they're farming, which is very good, is like a 25-30 minute timing, depending on how the game is going. And the cool thing is these supports doing this means that they're getting to that timing a lot quicker. And then the supports are also going to be really strong when they do hit that timing because they're getting a ton of farm by doing this. So here we are at about 24 minutes into the game. We're very close, and by we, I mean T1 is very close to hitting their timing. They have Lycan with his Helm Dom 2, so Lycan's really strong at this point. They have Tiny, who has BKB, Shadow Blade, so he's really strong at this point. And it's really important to note, too, that the Tiny went Echo Saber and then disassembled it into the BKB, because that 1,000 gold, they're realizing on T1 that Thunder Predator are marching down the lane and trying to go high ground. So if you are a core player in one of these sorts of games where the enemy team is pushing on you and they're deathballing and they have this timer and you don't, you may as well just go for your timing sooner. You can disassemble an item and be less greedy, get the BKB, so that way you can fight and their enemy team's not going to win the game when you're weak. You're guaranteed to hit, like, if you're going to win late game anyway, if you're going to win when you get these items anyway, why would you be greedy? Why would you go for the Echo Saber, not disassemble into BKB? It's 1,000 gold. That's going to take a lot of time. This push is about to happen. On Morphling 2, they have their Ethereal Blade as well. So this is a pretty okay timing, but we can see that Zephyr is still kind of unsure of it. So he cuts the creep wave. He walked past the creeps. He even uses Serpent Wards to clear the creep wave, because every little 30-second window that he can provide for his team is important. So this makes Nyx waste his Vendetta, TP on the Furion. The push is happening, but there's some crazy shit happening because of this creep cutting. So there's 2 people missing, trading for 1. He TP'd back, and then this results in Timbersaw being in a very dire situation, and it allows them to actually defend the base. The splitting of the enemy team lets them defend a base in a situation where they're not quite at the right timing. And we can see how this fight is going. It's like, it's okay, it's pretty good because of what Zephyr did, which was very beautiful, by the way. And it delays the push. But they don't just wipe the floor with Thunder Predator. They're not at their timing yet. That's going to come with the Lycan Eggs, which T1 is very close to. And we can see that at the 25-minute mark or so, it's actually a little bit past the 25-minute mark, even though they're playing into an Aegis and they've lost Rax and they've lost both of their supports, while this is happening, Tiny is wolf bitten and killing the enemy backline. And I think they were kiting out the Aegis too. They were letting MNZ slowly lose the Aegis. So they're aligning this timing as well with the Aegis despawning. So they know that Bristleback is going to have to TP out in a situation like this. And now, all of a sudden, you have 4 people on Thunder Predator dead. You have you have 3 carries, so 1 lane of barracks doesn't matter. Like, that's just more creeps for your carries to farm, and they're all very capable of doing it because they're literally carries. And now, Thunder Predator is in a situation where the gold lead is basically back to even. The momentum is in favor of T1, and T1 has this insanely greedy late game lineup versus a Deathball lineup that has to win early. And so the game at this point is effectively over. They just keep fighting on T1 whenever they have BKB plus Wolfbite. That is all they do. And the game, especially when Bristleback dies as the hero that, like, I think that's his first death, as the hero who hadn't died once, the moment he dies, the game is just over. Like, this is totally unwinnable at this point. And the only reason, the only way that they were able to stabilize this game in this way is because of the supports doing their ridiculous shenanigans for 20 minutes. It had to have been the most stressful thing ever to be these supports, because it's like, all right, we got to figure out a way to delay for literally 20 minutes. And they did it. They actually did it. And it was the most impressive thing that I saw at TI. And I've never seen this before in a game, not at this level.